ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。Hi everyone, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Glad to see you here. Right off the bat, before I forget, apologies. A week before yesterday, last Sunday, I wasn't feeling well and I didn't record my Gongyo. And apologies for that. Somehow, yesterday, I was convinced it was Saturday and I didn't record my Gongyo. Just maybe I'm just getting absent-minded. I'm sorry for those of you. Hopefully, you can go and play that portion of previous videos if you like the accompaniment, and that's useful for you. By all means. The same thing on the podcast. I just strip the audio from the videos and post them as podcasts, so it's identical. You can do that. That's not to say that I don't need to get my act together and use this other mic that I set up and the equipment and so forth and do that. It's life. And so I am committed still to doing it once a week. Videotaping, recording my Gongyo so that we can have the semblance of doing Gongyo together. To be truthful, I've probably been more in my mind geared toward, and I've been doing a lot of research on the Atom Mini Pro and other cameras, and trying to set up my Canon XL1, which won't work because it always has information on the screen, which if you use it as a monitor, it will record that information on battery status, time, and all that. No way to switch it off that I could find, unless there's some XL1 experts out there who know how I can turn off that messaging. Within the camera, I do understand that within the camera, when it records sans that information. I understand that. But when you hook up the camera to use it simply as basically a webcam, which is how all of these things work, it's just there. There's no way to remove it. You would think that even on the camera, most handheld cameras, you can turn off all the information on the screen once you've set your camera up, and you don't need to see that. But evidently the XL1 doesn't have, I couldn't find a menu setting anywhere where I could just turn all the information off. And they probably had good reason for that. That's not how the camera was set up. I love that camera, but I can't find a use for it anymore. It's really sad. Those were the days when I could save up money from my employment to buy such things. These days I have to rely on you guys and a little bit of Social Security that I get. So it's slow to build. Anyway, back to Gongyo. It's coming. I'm committed. And apologies. So, on the Ongi Kuden, we will continue with that today. I will continue with that. And I've got some pretty strong ideas about the approximate status of this document. What it really, I think it's legitimate in that it definitely has existed for hundreds of years. when it was recorded, what this particular document says about another document that is purported to exist. I think it says a lot about the Fuji School, and I'll leave it at that for now. I'm trying, and it's not my nature, you may know me by now, but whether it's my autistic spectrum or just my nature, my karma, whatever, I like to say what I think. And I have some pretty strong inclinations about this document so far, but I'm trying really hard to reserve my complete judgment of it, my analysis of it, until we get done with it. So let's get on with it, right? I should get on with it. I'm talking to myself now. All righty then. We left off at the next statement that's discussed here. Number 7, I don't know how the numbering goes here, but this is a quote, again, from the Lotus Sutra. Heavenly drums resounded of their own accord. I'm just curious to see what the notes have to say about that. Oh my. Lots of notes. 18. This is one of the suspicious signs heralding the auspicious signs heralding the preaching of the Lotus Sutra. All right, so not much extra information there. The commentary states, again, this kind of third person reporting. Heavenly drums resounded of their own accord represents the Buddha preaching spontaneously without being asked. That's an interesting statement because, as we know, we've been told repeatedly that the Buddha or Shakyamuni would respond to questions thrice made. So a question would be asked, and Shakyamuni would say, They'd ask the question in a different form, and he'd say, well, you need to figure that out. And then they'd ask a third time, and he'd capitulate. Okay, since I see that you're sincere in wanting to know this, let me answer the question. So, for Shakyamuni, or the Buddha, preaching spontaneously without being asked would seem not only an unusual act, but a particularly auspicious act, something of an exegesis, right? So, the Ongi Kuden states, so this is interesting, just an observation on structure. There's a statement regarded as a statement from Shakyamuni in his preamble, or the first part of the Lotus Sutra. Heavenly drums resounded of their own accord. This is how unusual this is. The drums start playing with nobody there playing them. They just, right? So this is very unusual. And then he says, the commentary states, what commentary? And the commentary states, heavenly drums resounded on their own accord represents the Buddha preaching spontaneously without being asked. Okay, so some commentary explains what that means. All right. The very next paragraph, the Ongi Kuden states. So obviously the Ongi Kuden and a commentary states aren't the same. They must be different. Why call them out differently? So again, there's these multiple references in this document. But okay. This phrase is part of, and this is the Ongi Kuden says this. This phrase is part of the verse section, praising at length the omens preceding the Buddha's preaching of the Lotus Sutra. which were the same in both this world and other worlds. Okay, but again, we're in 3,000 realms in every thought moment. So in this world and other worlds, I guess that means speaking to all realms at once. I think that's a much more comprehensive statement. But preaching spontaneously without being asked, quote unquote, means that the Tathagata Shakyamuni preached the Sutra of the Lotus Blossom of the Wonderful Dharma spontaneously, without being requested to do so. So, I imagine something like this would have happened anytime Shakyamuni had the next stage, a new sermon in mind, right? When he taught Perfection of Wisdom sutras for 12 years? I forget, but multiple years. And then he switched to the Lotus Sutra. He just started preaching a new sutra, a new sermon, right? So I wouldn't imagine it'd be that different. So it's always auspicious, of course, when after years of preaching a certain way, there's a decided shift, a new way, a new sermon, a new level of knowledge, of experience, of teaching, right? So certainly, when the Sutra of the Lotus Blossom of the Wonderful Dharma was first brought to the disciples, the followers of Shakyamuni, he didn't wait to be asked because nobody knew to ask about this new teaching. So yeah, it would have been spontaneous. He sprung a new one on us without being requested to do so. Now it is Nichiren and his followers, again this format, who, quote, preach spontaneously without being asked. Is this Shakabuku? We declare, quote, Nembutsu leads to the hell of incessant suffering. Zen is the work of devils. Shingon will destroy the nation, and Ritsu is traitorous, end quote. Well, there's some karmic relationship I have with this phone, I can tell you. So let's get rid of that. My apologies. So, yeah, I think after reading the following sentence, he's talking about Shakabuku. And he's saying, we, Nichiren followers, don't wait to be asked about practicing Lotus Sutra Buddhism. We strike up the conversation on our own and introduce Lotus Sutra Buddhism to anyone who will listen. Now, I understand the situation in Japan and Nichiren's propagation of Shakabuku as the way to change the nation. It was critical, right? It may be critical in our times today, witnessing what's happening in very provocative military situations throughout the world. You know, everything from the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan to now Ukraine, different countries taking different positions. There's a lot of saber rattling going on today. And I imagine it wasn't much different in Nichiren's time, maybe worse. And so the way to spread the teachings of the Lotus Sutra was probably to be done proactively, I guess, would be a way to say it. Rather than shoju, which is more a gentle kind of guiding way. Shakabuku is a much more kind of in-your-face kind of way. It doesn't mean you have to be challenging, but it means you need to proceed without waiting to be asked. And so the very next statement is, we declare, which is, again, a forceful statement. Nembutsu leads to hell of incessant suffering, which we know as the sufferings of daily life. That's the hell of incessant suffering. It's our samsaric experience, okay? It's not someplace deep in the ground, in the bowels, right? Zen is the work of devils. devils being people who create obstacles to your enlightenment. Shingon will destroy the nation, and Ritsu is traitorous. Shingon, very much a ritualistic mantra, mudras, all these different images and idols and all sorts of, it's very magical. It's far more like Western religions are than Asian or Buddhism, because it is Asian. So, and the Ritsu are traitorous. In other words, they're sending the nation to hell because nobody's in their right mind. Certainly not pursuing their Buddhahood. He goes on, this will preach spontaneously without being asked. This we preach spontaneously without being asked. So there it is, obviously, shakabuku. Hence, the three kinds of powerful enemies have arisen. Because we're making a stand, those who would oppose us are called forth to oppose us. Heavenly drums indicates Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Of their own accord means without obstruction. Resound means the sound of the voice chanting. In another sense, all living beings freely giving utterance to words and speech, sounds and voices is, quote, preaching spontaneously without being asked. That's interesting. That kind of backs off the shakabuku angle a little bit. It basically says, if you have conviction and you take resolve in instantiating your Buddhahood in this moment, then by that very act, you are instantiating the drums, spontaneously preaching the law of the Lotus Sutra, the Myoho Renge Kyo. So, yeah, you could read it that way as well, right? The cries of the guardians of hell rebuking evildoers, the groans of those starving in the realm of hungry ghosts, and the thoughts of all sentient beings arising one after another from the three poisons of greed, anger, and folly are all spontaneous preaching. The essence of all these sounds and voices is Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. And there's that line being walked again between Buddhahood and samsara. And the indication here, as we've heard time in different words, that by being enlightened to the true nature of all phenomena, we see clearly that there is no difference. That the folly and the anger and the greed realms are the delusion of thinking that this phenomenal world is something separate from and an impediment to our enlightenment. When in fact, when we attain enlightenment, we see clearly that it's all enlightenment. It's like glass half full, glass half empty, right? While sitting in the middle of a lake. That's more like the analogy should be. Both the origin and the trace teachings and the five characters, Myoho Renge Kyo, are the heavenly drums. Heavenly indicates the heaven that is the supreme meaning, the enlightenment. Preaching spontaneously means the preaching of the self-enjoyment body. What an odd statement. Self-enjoyment body? Today in the modern world, that combination of words has a lot of other charisma and characteristics to it other than Buddhist practice. What I believe is meant here is the reward body of the Buddha. Remember, chanting, and we know this not from this document, but from the Onko Kikigari and all of Nichiren's Gosho, as well as Shakyamuni's teachings and the Lotus Sutra, that our awakening of our Buddha nature is our manifestation of the three bodies of Buddha. The three bodies being our enlightenment, our earthly physical realm, and the reward, the Dharma, those two bodies being instantaneously manifested as not only the experience of enlightenment, but the profound reward of the enlightenment can only be experienced here in this physical realm, where we experience with our emergent consciousness what enlightenment is. So the three are really one, and the one is really the three. Again, and I'm restating this from all of our study, Buddha, enlightenment, awakening, only occurs here and now in this earthly life. This is the only place sentient and insentient beings occur, in samsara. When you're extinguished, when you die, there is no mind, there is nothing to experience. Therefore, you cannot experience the reward body or the manifest body. And therefore, no enlightenment. There's no mind. It's, as Chi said, it's the end of the matter. Right? But the self-enjoyment body, nowhere have I ever read in any sutra or gosho that combination of words. It's very suspicious. Chuan 3 of the Chi states, preaching spontaneously means that the beginning of the skillful means chapter, the Buddha arose from samadhi and addressed Shariputra, praising the wisdom of the Buddhas both extensively and briefly. By means of the suspicious signs manifested in both this world and other worlds, he expressed the profundity of the Dharma that exhausts the power of words. Whether explained as the object of meditation or as the wisdom that fathoms it, this Dharma is precisely the basis of the entire sutra and the core of the 5 periods. This is no trivial matter. Now, where does that come from? This book is too big. I should have published it in more volumes. So, according to this, it doesn't say. All right. So this is one of those other documents he's referring to. The basis of the entire sutra and the core of the 5 periods referred to in this commentary, there it is, some commentary, is Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, take your word for it. From the 9 important matters of the parable chapter of the Lotus Sutra, and again, these are all supposed to be elucidations that Nichiren has made to his 6 senior disciples about each chapter of the Lotus Sutra. So now we're on the parable chapter. Number 8. There is only one gateway. Chuan 5 of the Wen Chu states, now this is another commentary, is this guy, whoever's writing this, saying that this is what Nichiren chose to read from? Or is this something he's... See, this seems like a very devout monk of the Fuji School writing down a document, a study document, if you will, of some scholarship of the way of practicing in the Fuji School. And the way of practicing in the Fuji School draws from his master and the lineage of his master, presumably starting with Byakuren Ajari Nikko Shonen, with 2 Ks, Nikko with 2 Ks, who started the Fuji School. And at some time, within a couple of 100 years, this monk comes along and documents the teachings of the school, which include words that purportedly are directly, and all of them, the Ongi Kuden itself, been directly from Nikko with 2 Ks as a record he made of his impressions of the lectures that Nichiren imparted to all six, but they're definitely his impression. Different enough that he rebelled against all the other five and moved his center to Fuji. So we know there's a big difference, a chasm between them. We know that, number one. Number two, that there's quotations from several other commentaries and documents. That doesn't make them bad. It just means, it just shows us the structure and the nature of this document, which by some sects is being held up as the true teachings of Nichiren to his senior monks. But the very structure, see, these interpretations confound the imagination. That it's very obvious that this is a multitudinous compendium, if you will, of different commentaries. Nichiren didn't say this. This is a commentary by Chuan 5 of the Wen Shu. So it's we can't determine whether it's being included here in this study, in this document, because Nichiren quoted it. It doesn't say anything about Nichiren saying it, or Nikko saying it. It simply says, okay, now we're going to investigate this one, and now we're going to quote this other document. It doesn't say who quotes it. Again, the title of this document, and I think that's also telling, says, Excerpts from the Oral Transmission of the Sacred Meanings, Ongi Kuden. So is this student, is this monk trying to justify excerpts of a document that Nikko with 2 Ks created? Because that's what this looks like. All right, so what does the Chuan 5 of the Wen Shu state? There is only one gateway, which is the sentence being reviewed right now, serves to illustrate the meaning of the earlier passage, quote, by means of various teachings I declare the Buddha way, end quote. This gateway, moreover, has 2 meanings. It is the gateway out from the house and also the gateway to the cart. And again, this is the parable chapter, right, with the burning house. The house represents birth and death, while the gateway is the essential path of exit. Now, you may remember we read some Go-Shos about that parable chapter, and Nichiren had something to say about it too. From this view, it represents the conclusion of the provisional teachings. The cart is the Dharma of the great vehicle, the Lotus Sutra. The gateway, viewed as an opening into the great vehicle, represents the conclusion of the perfect teachings. So this is the analysis of the 4 methods of teachings, the Hinayana, I can't remember them all now, but the perfect and the we went over this already, and my mind is just gone outside because we have sun for the first time in a week. My apologies. Anyway, the 5 periods of teaching, and the great vehicle being the 5th, the perfect. There's a perfection of wisdom, and that's why it stopped me trying to remember the exact wording. Viewed as the opening of the great, represents the conclusion of the perfect teaching. The Ongi Kuden states, now we're back to the Ongi Kuden, the one gateway is dedication in the Lotus Sutra, or resolve in the Lotus Sutra. It says faith here, but we know that's a bad bias, doesn't belong in here. So I'm giving this document the same treatment of linguistic accuracy for us that I did the other. I'm not showing favoritism. I'm just trying to figure this out with you. The cart is the Lotus Sutra itself. The ox that draws it is Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. The house is the worldly passions, samsara. One goes round through birth and death, over the great earth of oneself being the Dharma nature. All right, so this is a repetition of what we've already read. It all tracks with Nichiren's teachings. So, merit. But I'm very fascinated by the comparison, even in scholarship, academic scholarship, of these two documents being of any kind of equivalence. Because after all, the Onko Kikigaki, which we almost never hear about, is defined in its title and it's in its authorship. These are notes taken from the lectures of Nichiren to us, to the six disciples, sorry. And it says, written by Nikko, with one K. So there's total ownership there. This is who said it, that's what this is, and everything in it tracks. Tracks as something that Nikko heard directly from Nichiren about these several matters, sentences. So that document is like, as far as a document, it's very clear. It's very clean. And when Nichiren quotes something else in his lectures, it's obvious that it's Nichiren quoting this, and the wordage around that quote tracks to the Gosho. So it sounds very authentic. Whether it was written at the time of Nichiren's life, which it's speaking in that voice, or whether it was captured later through a lineage of, copying, I can't speak to that. I don't know. This document represents an obvious difference of approach. To me, this document, by the way it is written, the voices it's written in, doesn't seem to place itself anywhere near the time period of Nichiren. It definitely seems to locate itself in time after Nichiren's passing. How much time? I don't know. But it also doesn't sound like Byakunin Ajari Nikko's voice either. It sounds like his teachings are being interpreted and recorded. Do you see what I'm saying? And I realize I'm contradicting what I said earlier about not jumping to conclusions, but my goodness. From the 6 important matters of the Faith and Understanding chapter, now you know and I know that the Lotus Sutra has been translated by several people at several different times, from H. Kern in the late 1890s to early 19th century, 20th century, English, French, Italian researchers, Chinese researchers, Japanese researchers. So we end up with a Lotus Sutra as a compendium of all these chapters, but every one of them has a different title for the same chapter, which leads you to understand why the rhetoric in the chapter itself might sound different or be canted a certain way. And this is what I've tried to do with my books available on the Go Show, for instance, on lulu.com/spotlight/Kwun, to remove as much bias out of there as possible so we could get to the root of the matter. What was Nichiren actually saying? So here we have again, this is a Faith and Understanding chapter. That's so Western, faith. There's no such word in Buddhism. Understanding, that I get. So let's say resolve and understanding. So there is a chapter called something on like a resolute mind, or I think there's, I can't remember all of the, have like 5, 6 different Lotus Sutra printings, so my mind's swirling around about them. At any rate, from this chapter, Chuan 6 of the Chi states, okay, so we're not even going to deal with the Lotus Sutra at all. We're going to go back to this commentary. Probably Chi-Yi's commentary, not sure. In the Cheng Fa Hua Xing, so now we're dealing with a commentary on the commentary of a commentary. This chapter is titled Faith and Joy. There we go again. There is a chapter on the appreciation of one's practice, right? What is the so I think that's the chapter we need to be looking for. If I think of the title, I'll say it. Something on a joyful life, or what is it? A rewarding life. While the meaning comes through, joy is not equal to understanding. This present chapter expresses the acceptance and understanding of the 4 great voice hearers, or hearing the teaching of the one vehicle. How could the word joy be most appropriate? So that was a big clue right there. Expresses the acceptance and understanding chapter. Now that makes more sense for the Lotus Sutra and Buddhism at large, right? The Ongi Kuden states, back to the words of Nikko with 2 Ks, among the titles of the 28 chapters of the entire Lotus Sutra, this one has the title Acceptance and Understanding, because I will not use that other word. The 3,000 realms in a single thought moment arise from the single word confidence, resolve. The attainment of the way by all Buddhas of the 3 time periods also arises from the single word. They keep using faith, but there is no such word. The attainment of the way by all Buddhas of the 3 time periods also arises from the single word, and we have to come up with a word that means dedicated, determined, confident, resolve. Maybe that word encapsulates all of that, right? Because this is what Nichiren taught throughout his Gosho, and it's what Shakyamuni taught throughout all of his teachings. Don't follow me, Shakyamuni. Don't follow my words. Follow the law. Have confidence and determination that that is the answer to your Buddha-ness. That is your immediate invocation of that which you already have. To use it, the clarity of your Buddha-ness, to experience this life fully. Right? So he's using one of the words of this title, a happy life. I remember that as a title in the Lotus Sutra. This word, acceptance, is a sharp sword that can sever the fundamental ignorance. So again, the teaching being, with your confidence and your determinism, your resolve, this is your sharp sword, sloughing away your ignorance, whatever your monkey mind and your samsaric attachments that are keeping you from experiencing this clarity, right? As expressed in the statement, having no doubt is called belief. Again, resolve, confidence. Acceptance or resolve is a sharp sword to cut off and destroy doubt and delusion. Of course. Understanding is another word for wisdom. Resolve is like the price of a jewel, and understanding like the jewel itself. The single word resolve will purchase the wisdom of all Buddhas of the 3 time periods. Wow, that sounds really contemporary. I've never heard that kind of dialogue about purchasing your wisdom. That's not Nichiren. It may be Nikko with 2 Ks. It's certainly not Shakyamuni. It still tracks, but the wordage is odd. Wisdom is Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Resolve is the cause for wisdom and represents the stage of verbal identity. I think I would switch those around. Apart from resolve, there is no understanding, and apart from understanding, there is no resolve. The single word resolve is defined as the seed of wondrous enlightenment. Now, because Nichiren and his followers believe and accept Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, this is like a meme now, they obtain a great precious jewel. As stated in the passage, quote, we have obtained for ourselves the supreme jewel cluster without seeking it. Without seeking it. Resolve is the seed of wisdom, and disbelief is the cause for falling into hell. It also states, resolve corresponds to the principle of true suchness that is unchanging. The reason is, resolve means that one arrives at knowing all dharmas to be the Buddha Dharma, and believes in this as the single principle of the true aspect. Now, not to contradict what this is saying, because even though it's using funky translation biases from Western religion, this concept that he's discussing here is something that is something I've talked about before, is that if you understand that the essential nature of all phenomena is this formation, this desire to be, this action to be, this magnetic drive toward amalgamating energies to experience fully the magnificent array of what is possible, what is potential in life, is to understand Buddha-ness, is to understand the very nature of all phenomena, that one can experience the formations of all those phenomena, is a release from feeling limited or identified as different from all those phenomena, and therefore fully experience this expression of that root energy, that momentum, that all of everything is. Look at the expansion of the universe. It's the same thing with life. It is life that does that. And we are experiencing it as time, space. So yeah, it's all the same. It's our delusions that make us think that everything's different. That's okay, because in all those differences, we can understand the true nature of all that difference is from the same thing that we all share in its various potentials, right? So this is what this concept is talking about here. Understanding corresponds to the wisdom of true suchness that accords with conditions. It's all the same. Suchnesses are all basically just separate conditions of the same source, same suchness. It indicates the wisdom of the self-enjoyment body, the reward body. Chuan 9 of the Wen Chu states, quote, having no doubt is called belief, what I would say resolve, confidence. A clear grasp is called understanding. Chuan 6 of Wen Chu states, when the people of the intermediate capacity heard the Buddha expound the parable of the 3 carts and the burning house, their doubts and confusion were for the first time removed. and they entered into discernment of the way of the great vehicle. Therefore, this is called resolve, determination, confidence. Because they advanced to cultivation of the way of the great vehicle, that is called understanding. Chuan 6 of the Chi states, here the two words resolve and understanding, or acceptance and understanding, confidence and, right, are treated separately with respect to the great vehicle and applied to discerning the way and cultivating the way, because doubts are removed. What removes your doubt? Confidence. A deep knowing, a deep commitment, a determination. That's what removes doubt, right? Confidence. That is called resolve, not faith. And because one further advances, that is called understanding, because with that confidence, things start to make sense. Faith applies to both discerning confidence applies to both discerning and cultivating, while understanding applies only to cultivation. Therefore, cultivation of the way is called understanding. From the 7 important matters of the Conjured City chapter, remember the Conjured City or the Fabled City or the Magical City, depending on which translation you're reading? 1. Okay, we're starting over with the numbering system now. The Conjured City. The Ongi Kuden states, so the words of Nikko with 2 Ks states, that's what that means. Conjured indicates the physical dharmas and the city, the mental dharmas. So the conjured indicates the physical dharma. So that would be equatable to what I've said as a constructed reality, the apparatus of reality. And the city, the mental dharmas, our understanding, our perception, right, of what we perceive in the physical world. Okay, I follow. Expounding the impermanence of these 2 kinds of dharmas, physical and mental, samsara and human mind, is the heart of the provisional teachings. The intent of the Lotus Sutra is to expound impermanence as consistently or constantly abiding. So in this physical and mental perception, we are now enlightened to understand that all of it is transient. It's moving, it's kinetic, it's not static, it's not things, it's process. Like a flower, we never make the mistake of thinking that a flower blossoming is now blossomed forever. We know that's in the process of blossoming and then slowly dying and disappearing. We know that. It's no accident that the lotus flower is used as the example of the Lotus Sutra. That everything is in process. And as soon as it flowers, the lotus blossom sheds its seeds for the next iteration, the next birth-death cycle, while it slowly decays and dies. Poof. That's how everything around us is, including ourselves. It may be incredibly hard to perceive that the hard drive that this video is on won't exist in perpetuity. It's going to exist a good long while, but it's still decaying as we watch it. If we understand that everything in life, from the smallest speck of salt on your table to the grandeur of an unfathomably huge universe that continues to expand, will one day no longer be the same thing, then we begin to understand how incredibly fragile life is and how incredibly precious each single moment is. When you get that, it knocks you on your butt. Right, Tammy? Some of you, and I'll interlude here in just a minute. Let me finish this paragraph, and then I want to talk about fusion with the mandala. Hence, the conjured city is precisely the place of jewels. In the final analysis, Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo open body and mind to reveal them as the wonderful Dharma. This is called the conjured city, being precisely the place of jewels. Whenever you hear the word jewels, please think in your mind treasure tower. And where is that treasure tower? As I've often retold, that treasure tower, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, is your internal Gohanzen, your reality of Buddha. That's your treasure tower. Your treasure tower is the physical, manifest reward body of the Dharma body. All three at once. And when you chant and your confidence grows, therefore your resolve grows, and your determination grows, and you chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to your mandala, that essential picture of your wisdom, your understanding, your Gohanzen opening door of your mental Buddhahood, that door of perception, of understanding, the mandala starts to dissolve. Sometimes it looks 3D. Sometimes the central tower of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo seems to disengage from the rest of the scroll and come toward you or recede. Things move or jitter, right? You know when that is happening, that your mind is completely focused on your Buddha-ness. And the actual physicality of life starts to change in your perception, in your mind. And instead of seeing a mandala on a piece of paper, you're starting to see a mandala that's engaging with your time space and the reality that nothing exists in and of itself. There's no permanence. Everything is fluid. Everything is constantly in, what's the word? Transformation. What's the word? Flux. Everything, every atom, every force, gravity, concept is constantly at flux, changing, roiling, moving. And we can perceive that with our Buddha-ness. So when you see your mandala start to do funny things, or you think, did that move? Well, the moment you do that, suddenly it stops moving because now you've gone back to samsara. Let it flow. And you will feel in your body that Dharma reality. You will feel the reward body. You will feel all of this Dharma body and reward body in your physical body. That kind of daimoku, that kind of recitation of gongyo, that's when you'll know how real this is. This practice is incredible. That is your enlightenment. That is your realization of the true nature of samsara. as a very fluid, monumental picture of the process of life. It's not like magic words and an incantation, and it's hard work, because you have to develop that focus. You have to develop your sensitivity to your Buddha nature. And it requires a lot of shedding of the physical attachments we've made to things. And that's why it's designed this way. This is the benefit of Nichiren's advent. He gave us something to focus on so we don't get distracted. We chant with the voice. We hear that a lot now of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. We intonate. We have to think about saying it in the proper order. We have to focus on projecting our daimoku to envelop ourselves in that ninth consciousness. We don't want anything anywhere around to distract us from this mandala, so that we can crack open this walnut of samsara, so that, boom, we can be in our enlightened true nature, which is the true nature of everything. And so, yeah, things can look a little bit frightening, wondrous, disconcerting. You should know when you first experience that, your tendency might be to go, what the hell is that? And then it goes away. You have to get comfortable there. Believe me, if you get comfortable there, when you're done, you will not know how much time you've spent in front of your Butsudan. Time will not matter. Time will cease to be a thing. You will be fully connected with your Buddha-ness, your timelessness, right? Beginningless time. You'll experience it. And as you walk away from your Butsudan, everything will seem different. But that's okay. Don't be frightened by that. That's just your samsaric mind adjusting to having just been cleared. Inertias and potentials in your karma have just been moved around, quelled. Cessations are happening in your tendencies and conditions. Others are being molded toward your enlightenment, cleansed. Others stripped away, others more developed. You are changing your mind and your perception of life. And it's always going to change toward the positive, toward the nurturing, toward what you need to go the next step. This is why it's important to keep going. So you don't want to stop in the middle and then trip over yourself because you haven't completed your journey. Right? All right, we'll get back to this now. Actually, I spent an hour. All right, I'm going to call that for today. The next paragraph starts with the 10 realms are the conjured city. Yeah. The 10 realms are observation of conditions and tendencies that we have, karma. And karma is our constructed city, samsara. So yeah, a lot of this is tracking with the teachings of Nichiren and the Lotus Sutra and Shakyamuni and Chi-I, the whole history of Buddhism. So there is good knowledge in this document. The nature of the document, that's where controversy seems to be. And I've already identified where there's a serious error in the beginning of it, which I think points to foundational discrepancies in the Fuji School. But once we finish this document, I'll do a wrap-up, and we'll compare the two documents. Not that I haven't already indulged in that. I hope I'm not confusing anyone. But I think as much as study is important, I'm a big proponent of it. And so was Shakyamuni, of course, and Nichiren. That's Buddhism. I think it's important that we stay objective and that we understand what we're saying when we read some of this language from one writer to another, and we can start to identify where certain things start to slip, others are really compounded and validated. We have to be aware. We can't just whimsically jump around from one to another. Nichiren made it very clear, Shakyamuni made it very clear, that that's the danger of falling in love with words or with images or with people. Don't follow the person, follow the law. Don't follow the person, follow the law. How many times have we read that of Shakyamuni's own words? Nichiren repeated it abundantly in several letters he wrote. So why should it be any different for you and I, right? We'll get back to that. Thank you for listening. I'm so proud of you guys just for sticking around for this practice. Keep on doing it. Fuse with your mandala, which is really fusion with your Gohonzon, your Buddha mind. And those of you, my patrons on Patreon, and my patrons not on Patreon, who just go through PayPal me at Sifu Sylvain, all of your donations, incredibly important. Keep on your practice, keep it strong. Be mindful of your health. Be kind to yourself. Keep yourself healthy and your friends. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.